Welcome to A Chef's Grimoire, Spring. Today we'll be working with Judgment. So here we are, Judgment page. I wanted to point out that this is the Chef's Grimoire. It is all of our cards that we've done up until this point. And my plan is to eventually get this into a book so that you can have this. Not only will it be a book, but I also wanted to, of course, you would turn, say, to the Lover's page. And from there, you would turn the page and there would be a description of the card and all of the gold nuggets that are attached to the card. And then turning the next page, you would find all the recipes for that card. Right now, these are just, this is my prop that I use every week to do my videos, but eventually it's going to come together to be a book. So if you're interested in this, please let me know in the comments and we can get it underway. If you would like to skip ahead to the cooking and bypass all of the history and the symbolism of the card that we're going to go through now, then there's timestamps written in the description and you can go ahead and choose wherever you'd like to start and just scroll right there. The way I set up all my videos is I turn to the page that we're going to be discussing. And then from there, we're going to continue the story of the Fool's Journey. Each page and each card builds upon the Fool's Journey. So this is the story that I've written for Judgment specifically. We're going to continue now. The day was busy with tourists at the pool. The Fool was on guard with two others, and each had a section of the pool to watch over. The Fool was placed at the shallow end, since they had just received their training and were still new to the guard staff. The Fool noticed a little boy who repeatedly left their mother's side to head straight towards the deep end of the pool. The mother caught him twice, but then got into conversation with a friend, and the boy toddled away. The Fool became more and more concerned as the mother was in deep conversation, but the boy was getting closer and closer to the deep end. They decided to climb down from their post to go over to the deep end guard and alert them. Just then, the boy went to reach for a ball and fell into the pool. The Fool looked to the middle post, but noticed the guard was giving first aid to a swimmer that had cut their foot. No one noticed the toddler fall in. The Fool quickly ran and dove in. The child had sunk straight to the bottom. The Fool grabbed him, brought him to the surface, and proceeded to pull him from the water. The child was not breathing, so the Fool instantly started CPR. Within seconds, the little boy began to heave and release water from their mouth. His face turned red, and he began to cry. The Fool sat back on their heels and looked up at the sky, thanking the heavens for the child's safety. By then, the boy's mother and both the guards were huddled around the scene. The mother grabbed the boy and went into a million emotions, from screaming at him and crying hysterically to holding him so tight the Fool thought that he would have to do CPR all over again. Completely shaken by the event, the other two guards insisted the Fool go to the clubhouse to take a break. The Fool's head was spinning as they sat on a bench and took deep breaths to try to calm themselves. They were very grateful they were able to save the boy, but at the same time, they realized how events can change so quickly. Seconds can determine life or death. Yet years go by, taking for granted that we will always have tomorrow. We say goodbye to our loved ones who go off to their business of the day, not knowing if we will ever see them again. We put things off. But what happens if tomorrow never comes? This event was confirmation that the Fool needed to stay on the path of building a life where they remain in the present moment. They think back to the High Priestess and realize that everything she taught them just happened in these very few moments. Curiosity led them to be in the right spot to save the boy, but inner wisdom took over to actually know what to do in the moment. And as the magician stated, they had all the tools necessary without thinking too much about it. The Fool acknowledged all the wise teachers and guides they met on their journey so far. Life was always a new, eye-opening experience with hidden keys to deeper understanding that can only be found from being present and participating, because we don't know what tomorrow will bring. In the dictionary, judgment is described as this: the process of forming an opinion or evaluation by discernment. Now, in the dictionary, discernment is described as this: the ability to perceive, understand, and judge things clearly. Arthur Edward Waite, who is the creator of the Rider-Waite-Smith deck, describes the Judgment card in the pictorial key to the tarot as this: it is the card which registers the accomplishment of the great work of transformation in answer to the summons of the supernal, which summons the heard and answered from within. Herein is the intimation of a significance which cannot be carried further in the present place. What is that within us which does sound a trumpet, and all that is lower in our nature rises in response? Almost in a moment, almost in the twinkling of an eye. Now, Arthur Waite is known to be a little flowery in his language, and I'm not going to give you my understanding of that paragraph just yet. I'm going to continue on. And within the card, we see a picture depicted, yes? And this picture is the Last Judgment, or at least how the Last Judgment is described in the Bible. So I'm going to read to you the biblical reference, and then we'll start to break it down a little further. So in my research, many quotes reference the Last Judgment in the Bible, but this depiction in the Judgment card of the Rider-Waite-Smith deck, and others which we'll get into, is taken from both Revelations 20:13 and Corinthians 15:52. In Revelations 20:13, the Bible states, "And the sea gave up the dead who were in it. Death and Hades gave up the dead who were in them, and they were judged, each one of them, according to what they had done." 1 Corinthians 15:52 states, "In an instant, in a blink of an eye, at the last trumpet, for the trumpet will sound, the dead will be raised incorruptible, and we shall be changed." Now, interestingly enough, much of what Arthur Waite spoke about the way that this card should be depicted is similar to the references from the Bible, at least in my mind. I'll let you be the judge of that. But moving on, we have keywords for this particular card. And the keywords are awakening, dawning of a new age, second chances, transformation on one's life path. The astrology is, the card is correlated with Scorpio. And Scorpio is the sign that rules life, death, and resurrection. Scorpio is the transformational sign of the zodiac. They go through many lives, almost like a cat with 9 lives. Now, the planet that's associated with this card is Pluto. Pluto is a relatively newer planet, discovered only in 1930. So the other sign that's associated with Scorpio is Mars. And both of those planets really do justice to this Judgment card. In what way? Well, Pluto correlates to the underworld. Its energy works under the surface. It brings the surface, transforms it from the inside out, and connects the seen to the unseen. It's the planet of power and regeneration. So much like Scorpio itself, or Scorpio as the sun sign, the planet is perfectly fitting for it. Now, prior to Pluto, there was Mars, right? And Mars is all about war, destruction, picking away at all the bits until there's nothing left, and therefore something new can spring forth. So both of those, excellent for this particular card. The element associated with the card is fire. Now, from Norse to Christian belief, the world ends in fire, hence the Last Judgment ending with fire. But if you think about it, things that are burnt by fire turn to ash. And ash, when scattered over the ground, actually stimulates the earth to regenerate itself. So, just as all things, once something is cleared away, there is always something new to fill in that void, to fill in that gap. And it's up to us and our transformation and how we transform, either individually or as a collective, that decide what goes into the void in order to blossom, bloom, and nurture. Numerology of the card is 20, 2 10s, or the X and the X, each one equaling a 10 in Roman numerals. So 20 in numerology, you have to break it down to a single digit. So 20 is 2 plus 0 equals 2. And 2 brings us all the way back to the High Priestess, hence the reason she was in the story of the continuation of the Fool's Journey. So 2 is limitless possibilities through inner work. So all the way back to line 1 and card number 5, the Hierophant, is when this transformation really starts to begin. Why? Because in the Hierophant, we begin to ask questions. We begin to question what's been taught to us. And in questioning, in seeking further knowledge, that's when you can start to make decisions that are educated. From not only life lived, but also just in the discovery of what you find. Now, 2 also breaks down to, as we said, the High Priestess is numbered 2. And the High Priestess is all about deep knowing of the inner realms. And she's a seer, a perseverer of hidden truths. The High Priestess has all of that inner knowledge. She's done the work. And it's brought forth here in the Judgment card. From 2 to 20, and all the cards in between help one that's not the High Priestess get to that status. Now, 0 is also in the makeup because you have 20, so 2 plus 0, and 0 is our Fool. And the Fool is containing everything and nothing, right? So it's kind of interesting, right? It's a perfect platform to build upon. And that's exactly what we've done in this journey. So I wanted to get into a little card symbolism. This right here is the actual depiction in the Rader-White-Smith deck, and Pamela Coleman Smith did all of the illustrations for the deck. I just extended it in each direction to cover the page. I also may use different colors, but the actual depiction and symbolism is still all here. So we're going to go through that now. But before we get here, I think I've mentioned, and you might know from your own research, that the Rider-Waite-Smith deck was created and published in 1909. So there was very few tarot cards prior to it to pull information from or to inspire from. I do have some pictures of cards that date back to the 15th century and prior to 1909. So I'm going to show them to you now, and you'll see where we came from to understand where we're going with this card. So you'll notice similarities in all of these cards. Yeah? We'll go through each one of them real quickly. But we have Carrie Yale Visconti. So the Visconti family actually commissioned 2 artists to do 2 different decks. They may have even done more, but I'm sorry, I don't know that for a fact. But these 2 were commissioned by the Visconti family in Italy in the 1500s. This card from the Visconti Sforza has the angels blowing the horns. And this one from the Carrie Yale Visconti also has an angel blowing a horn, and their horn has a standard or a flag. This angel here is holding a flag. I know it's hard to see, but they are from the 1500s. So we're lucky we have them at all. You'll also see that we have people rising from graves, right? Not much difference here. There's a castle in the background. There's a little more detail. Here we have the people that look like they're in a coffin or a hot tub, depending on where you want to really go with it. There's 2 women and an older gentleman just dead center. Yeah. And this character up here, not sure, maybe that is the high priest, or he's wearing a crown, so it could be the king. It could also be God. We have the Rosewald depiction. Again, an angel blowing a horn and people on either side. Not sure if this here at the bottom is to indicate a grave or a box that they're coming out of, but it could be. And here we have some more, again, from the 15th century, not the 1500s, it's the 15th century. These cards were created. The Jacques Vaville is similar. This one is actually the most similar, and the Marseille, to the Rider-Waite-Smith deck. Why? Because they have the same flag, they have the single angel, and the way that the angel is pointing the horn down towards the people. And there's 3 figures in either of these decks coming out of, this one specifically graves, this one is just a box. And there's hills and mountains in the background. So these 2 really bring the Rider-Waite-Smith deck to its platform. This Charles VI depiction is 2 angels blowing the horn. Nothing has really changed there with that, other than how many angels are there. And there's like an orgy going on here. We have 7 people, all coming out of one box with many holes. So this one is going, in a way, it's brought to the forefront of the Rider-Waite-Smith deck. And I'll tell you what I mean in detail when we look at the Rider-Waite-Smith Judgment card. But now we know where we came from. It hasn't really changed. It's very true to itself. The first thing we see in the card is definitely the angel. And the angel has red wings. Hopefully they look red in your screen. I did depict them as like a reddish orange. Now, as we know from the Temperance card, I went into detail about the red-winged angels. They are the Sephirim, which are the highest ranking of angel. So if they have red wings, they're the highest ranked angel. And therefore, this angel is a direct messenger from God. And that's exactly what the word angel means. It is messenger. Archangels are actually below the Sephirim, but a Sephirim angel can also be an archangel. And this is all to my research, so hopefully I'm accurate. You'll let me know if I'm not. However, the whole idea of the angel blowing the horn is a cosmic wake-up call, which can help you change your life. It's guiding you over the threshold. You'll also notice that there's gray clouds here. And back with the High Priestess, we talked about the veil, right? She's often depicted with a veil in front of her face. And the fact that she can see through the veil. The veil is very thin. It's the difference between our human existence and spiritual existence. So, to break through those clouds, as this angel is doing, they have the ability to be both spiritual and grounded and earthly. And they're coming through, they're breaking the veil in order to give their message. Now, we did find angels all through the Major Arcana. We have the angel that's in the Lover's card. That is Raphael, the angel of healing. And in the Lover's card, that angel is telling us that we're actually looking at a version of ourselves in the things we love. There's an angel in the Temperance card who's known to be Gabriel, right? Gabriel is the angel of timing as well as many other things. But in balancing, in the alchemy of balancing or tempering something, it's a timing thing as well, right? It associates much with timing. You have to be accurate to get the end result you're looking for. Now, the Devil card is actually interesting because Baphomet is actually depicted in the Rider-Waite-Smith deck. But there's tarot enthusiasts that say that the angel Uriel, who is the angel of death, is actually Baphomet. So it's an angel that's not out in the open. They actually are disguised. And that angel is telling us we're called to release something in order to bring transition and to open. So you can see there's themes here, right? And all of the themes kind of jumble into one thing, kind of like a when you're stirring the pot, which we'll do later actually to poach our egg, but you're stirring the pot and making a vortex. And all of these things that we're talking about with the angels from the cards prior to this one start at the top of the vortex, and the vortex keeps spiraling down until it has to bring something up. I like that metaphor. I didn't even think of that until now, but yeah, when we poach our egg, remember that. That's a little precursor to what is on our menus. Now, in the Death card, the angel isn't forward, just like with the Devil card, but we also know that there's an angel of death. It could be Lucifer, who was also an angel, an archangel, by the way, and a Sephirim angel before they became an angel of the underworld. So the death character riding the pale horse could be considered an angel. And in death, we let go in order to transform. And now we're here with Judgment, and we have this angel. And this is, many tarot enthusiasts say that this is Gabriel again because of the blowing of the horn. But I came to the conclusion that it's actually Michael, the Archangel Michael. Why? Because Michael had the job of escorting souls to heaven. He has been known for experiencing a full merging of all that is possible. Crossroads of life, the end of a cycle, and making decisions. And Michael is one of those angels that you pray for in all of those aspects. So that's why I'm more or less convinced that the angel here, if it's not, it should be Michael. Now, Michael, or Gabriel, is blowing this trumpet. And a trumpet is one of the oldest instruments we have, next to the drum. So a trumpet may not have been a trumpet, but a horn of some sort, right? They used to take the horns of animals and blow into them as a call for harvest or emergency or something like that before we had the brass trumpet we know today. Blowing the horn was used in wartime as a call to arms. It leads us into battle. It also is sounded for triumphant situations, right? So we blow the horn when we're triumphant and celebrating something. And it's blown as an alert, aside from the beautiful music that it makes. But all of that goes back to the meaning of the card. Why is this horn being blown? By whom? To whom? And what does it mean? Now we have a flag here that's dead center, and this is the flag of St. George. It's also been linked to, over the centuries, many different things. The Knights Templar had a flag similar to this, but you'll notice that it's even in its length of arms. And Rachel Pollack in the 78 Degrees of Wisdom states that the cross in the banner indicates a meeting of the opposites, a joining of all things that have been separated. She goes on to say, sometimes in life, a person can come to a crossroads where a decision is required on whether to make some great change. We're getting a pattern here, yes? Now going back to this flag being considered the flag of St. George. In heraldry, St. George's cross, or the cross of St. George, is a red cross on a white background, which from the late Middle Ages became associated with St. George, the military saint, and often depicted as a crusader. Now, St. George is an extremely popular, when I say extremely, it's like I'm not even breaking the surface, saint. So I'm going to give you a very short summary of St. George, so you're up to speed with who he is. But the flag of St. George once and now is, in a retrospect way, the flag of England. But we got to go back to George, right? The saint. Because even though England and many other countries adopted him, George was actually from Lod, which in modern age, is right next to Israel's main airport. So he was from an Israeli village. He never stepped foot in England. His father was Greek and his mother came from Lod, or Lydia, depending on what century you're in. Lydia was then in Palestine. So he was born in Turkey, but lived and died in the 3rd century, Palestine, and was buried in Lod after his death on the 23rd of April, 303 AD. George himself was a multi-ethnic Middle Eastern man, and today he is the patron saint of not only England, but also Portugal, Ethiopia, Catalonia, Bulgaria, Georgia, Romania, Lithuania, Germany, Greece, Moscow, and many more. Still, all of this ethnic diversity counts for nothing if he wasn't significant, right? I mean, think of all those countries adopting this same saint. So let's get into the story of why George is St. George. It's very cut short. Really, if you really want to get to know him, you've got to research him. It's very interesting. The Roman Emperor Diocletian was planning a decree to make paganism the religion among his people. George, who was a devoted Catholic, heard of this and went directly to the emperor in order to convince him to change his mind. Well, the emperor would have immediately put anyone confronting his power to death on the spot. But he knew George was a valid soldier and regarded as a hero. So instead, he gave George a choice. If George pledged faith to the pagan gods, the emperor would spare his life. George did not budge, however, and the emperor ordered him to be tortured until he embraced paganism. Now remember, this is the year prior to 303 AD. Now this is where the story gets a bit gruesome from here, and in a way kind of comical, because the tortures went on for nearly a month, and no matter how bloody and cruel, George came out of it perfectly fine. Finally, the emperor ordered George's death on April 23rd by beheading. You can't walk away from a beheading. So he actually did die. The famed tales of George's defeating a dragon did not arise until almost 500 years after his death. And no one is quite sure how the Roman soldier of near complete anonymity metamorphosed into something so dashing of a hero, celebrated by the world over for his courage. Now, George, when he kills the dragon, it was like 500 years later that they brought him back to do this deed. And that dragon was just wreaking havoc on a village, to the point where it just tore apart everything. So the people got together and said, well, we'll just start to give sacrifices. And they sacrificed all the children, which is terrible. And then when finally it came to the king of the village, or the highest level of the village's daughter to be sacrificed, George came in and didn't slay the dragon initially, just wounded him so that he can march into the village with the highest ranking officer's daughter and dragon in tow to show the people, and then he killed the dragon. So this guy was something, huh? Now, the English author and Christian apologist G.K. Chesterton wrote this, and I found this phrase to be just perfect about St. George. Fairy tales do not give the child his first idea of bogey. What fairy tales give the child is the first clear idea of the possible defeat of the bogey. The baby has known the dragon intimately ever since he had an imagination. What the fairy tale provides for him is a St. George to kill the dragon. Our gray people. So Arthur Waite wrote this about the depiction of the people. The dead are rising from their tombs, a woman on the right, a man on the left hand, and between them, their child, whose back is turned. It should be noted that all the figures are as one in wonder, adoration, and ecstasy expressed by their attitudes. That again goes back to the collective, right? Not just individual, but it's a collective awakening. The sleeping dead are resurrected. The phrase that comes to mind is it just starts with one, or one drop causes a ripple effect. Now, all of these people are coming out of graves. The graves This really hit home with me. The graves are leaving behind an old form. And what does that mean in modern day? Well, it could mean completely changing a career. It could mean traveling to a brand new place you've never been before. Maybe you've never taken an airplane ride before. So these are all things that we do to leave behind something that we've only done day in and day out and have never done anything new, anything that would open the mind more. The graves are symbolic of holding us in position, almost like the chains around the neck of the devil card and the lovers in the devil card. The chains were loose around their necks. They could take them off at any time. Graves, yes, once you're in them, you're in them. But in this card, they're coming out of their graves. So they're leaving behind anything that kept them stagnant, that kept them not having knowledge. And as we know today, knowledge is power for everything, right? Knowledge helps you make decisive decisions that are well judged, right? Remember, discernment. So I love the fact that the graves are what's holding you back. A dead-end job is a grave. A relationship that is not thriving is a grave. And that is exactly what you would start to feel out when you're doing a reading with the Judgment card being in the reading, right? What is a dead end for you? What have you been thinking about to change, but for whatever reason, keep the coffin closed on it? Why, right? And then you get to the bottom of it with the other cards. But I digress. We have the mountains. There's snowy white mountains in the background. Snow means winter, which is the hardest time of the year, right? It's when we lose the most lives. People die either from the cold or from not enough to eat, not preparing, or having the resources to prepare. They're in the background, which, as we talked about with many of our other tarot cards, any mountainous structure in the background is usually what you've already overcome. And that's certainly true here, because these people are coming out of their graves. So talk about overcoming the impossible. The mountains that are snow-covered, and they're pretty steep mountains, are in the background. They've overcome them. But that's not to say that they won't have more in the future. Now, one thing I did want to point out about this Judgment card is some tarot enthusiasts believe that this actually is the last card in the Major Arcana. So this is 20, and the 21st card, which is what we're going to do next week, is the World. The World is more or less a celebration. You've taken the journey, you've gotten to the end, you must celebrate. Yes, we could leave it here, only to start again. But, why do anything if you can't have some kind of celebratory finding at the end, right? Why? Why go through the journey? So I believe that the 21st card, the World, should be the last card, even though it's about being celebratory. And I'm not going to get into it in this card because we are speaking about Judgment. But I did want to put it out there that this card is sometimes referred to as one of the last cards in the majors. And it is, because it's the second to last, but it's where we come into our realization. We expand everything that we've been holding within ourselves for so long. And it's the turning point. But at that point, it should be celebrated, either internally, just by you, or out in the open, in the collective. These are milestones, right? They're huge, and they can't go without recognition. So with that, we're hungry. We got to feed the masses. So I'm going to talk about our menu. I don't usually go into detail on the menu because I'm going to be cooking, but I did want to talk a little bit about this one because my inspiration came from the St. George's flag. Our whole menu is the epitome of English recipes. We have a poached duck egg with asparagus and grainy mustard vinaigrette. It's an upscale version of an English breakfast, and it's made for springtime because remember, our St. George was put to death on April 23rd, right at the cusp of spring equinox. And spring equinox is the emergence from winter into spring. So it's also coming out of our graves in a way. We're all hibernating in winter, and then we come forth in spring. The next dish that we're doing is fish and chips. Fish and chips is the iconic meal associated with England, and although it's usually paired with different sauces, I am going to pair it today with a tartar sauce. And last but not least, we have St. George Bakewells. Bakewells are tarts that are a traditional British dessert. They date back many centuries and are attributed to the noble culinary traditions. Ingredients were pricey to make or to use, so things like eggs, almonds, butter were so reserved that only the wealthy and the powerful could indulge in this treat for many hundreds of years. The original recipe is from Bakewell in the Peak District of Derbyshire, England. They can take the form of either a tart or a pudding, but today we're making them into a cupcake. So, let's get cooking. Mise en place consists of ham, a duck egg, asparagus, grainy mustard, white wine vinegar, olive oil, and maple syrup. I also have a jar to make the dressing in. We're going to add all of the dressing ingredients to the jar. And the beauty about this is by shaking it, it's going to emulsify versus doing it by hand and adding the oil very slowly. We're just going to add it all, pop the top on, and give it a good shake. Now you can't let it go without tasting your work. Now here's our duck egg. It's still chilled from the fridge. And I'm going to crack it on a hard surface and then get my 2 thumbs in between the shell and pull. There it is. Perfect. Now I'm going to set that aside. For the asparagus, I'm going to line it up at the tips. And I'm going to take my knife and I'm going to look for where it's the most tender. And you'll know when you feel it. And I'm just going to cut off all the other stalks. And I'm thinking these are still a little too long, so I'm going to trim them out even more. Now we're going to roast these. So I have a sheet tray lined with parchment paper. And I'm going to take the rest of the olive oil that I didn't use in the dressing and put it on top of the asparagus. Good seasoning of salt. And I'm going to mix this all together. Make sure you also get the tips. Get them coated in the oil. I have a 400-degree oven. And these are going to roast for about 4 to 5 minutes, maybe. Meanwhile, I have a boiling pot of water. I'm going to add white vinegar. It's just white distilled vinegar. And with a whisk, I'm going to whisk in one direction until I have a deep vortex. Then I'm going to take the egg and I'm going to, as close to the water as possible, dump it in. You can see the vortex is continuing to spin, and that's bringing all the egg whites to enclose the egg yolk. Now it's still at a high boil, so I'm going to turn the water down now that I know that the egg yolk is encased in the white, and I'm just going to let this poach. All these whites that are on top are kind of ugly, so I'm going to very gently skim them off the surface. Now I believe my egg is done, but you don't know until you test it. I'm going to press it, and if it feels like a full water balloon, it's done. So now we're going to take ice water and put the egg into it. It stops the cooking process. Now to plate our beautiful creation, we're going to take our asparagus that was about 4 minutes in the oven and make like a crosshatch, like this. Now I'm going to take 2 pieces of ham that I did fry in butter and place that over the top. Now my duck egg came out of the chilled water and I put it into this vessel that's going to take boiling water. That's boiling water I'm pouring over it now. And I'm going to submerge it and then immediately take it out of the water. You don't want to cook it, you just want to warm it up. And this is the secret. Place it onto a paper towel. Make sure that it's super dry. And then from there you can put it onto the palette of the plate. And now you can dress it with that gorgeous dressing. And it is ready to serve. Okay, you guys, there it is. Beautiful. A duck egg. Have you ever had a duck egg before? They're about 30% larger than a chicken egg, according to my research. But they're very decadent, right? They have a lot more yolk, as well as white. I saved the best for last. I'm going to cut into it now so you can see it just evolve. Ready? This is the best part of a poached egg. Look at that! Yeah! Yum. Nothing like it. Nothing like it. A delicious poached egg that's dry. Dry. You don't want a pool of water in your poached egg. That's disgusting. So make sure after you put them into the ice water, right? When they come out of the boiling water and they're done, put them into ice water. That shocks them so that they stop cooking, right? Then you resurrect them by boiling your kettle and pouring hot water over them, leaving them in for half a second, taking them out and putting them on a paper towel before they go on to the decorated plate. It's the difference between night and day. So let's try this, right? So I have my egg. Very excited about this. Oh my gosh. It makes its own sauce. So nice. Look at that. I'm going to get a piece of asparagus and some ham. Beautiful. The asparagus is still crunchy. Now, I think throwing the asparagus in the oven is so much better than throwing it into the boiling water. I mean, you could, right? You have the water boiling already, you've done your eggs, throw your asparagus in. But I just love oven roasted asparagus. I think it's perfect. It stays crunchy. I had it in the oven all of maybe 4 minutes at 400. So good. And the ham is delicious. So you could use any ham. You could use like a Serrano ham would be really nice. You could use speck or, any cured ham and just fry it for a couple minutes per side. And you don't have to use duck eggs. You don't. You can use regular chicken eggs and it's the same process. It's just, because they're a little smaller, you just want to make sure that you watch them a little more. That's all. And the vinaigrette has a little bit of sweetness from the maple syrup And you could exchange maple syrup with honey, whatever you have available. But this is delicious for breakfast, right? And most English and Irish breakfasts usually have either a blood sausage or a sausage of some kind and a roasted tomato and beans, right? That's a traditional English breakfast. This is more high class, right? And I did get this recipe from Gordon Ramsay. And yeah, I must say it's very good. It's a nice, different approach to Eggs Benedict. And, you know, it's a little English to boot. Our mise en place for our batter consists of cornstarch, flour, I have it divided, baking powder, salt, seltzer, and dark beer. I also have a nice large vessel to mix everything in. So we're going to start by adding our wet ingredients, followed by the dry ingredients. And the flour that's left is going to help me when I am dredging the fish. In mixing this batter, it needs to be a consistency of like heavy cream. And then when we get there, we're going to let it rest in the fridge for between a half hour and an hour. Now, while the batter is resting, we're going to get our potatoes ready for our chips. So peel them nice. And then with a sharp knife, you're going to cut off the ends of the potato. And you're going to cut it directly in half. And working with 1/2 at a time, you're going to insert your knife lengthwise so that you have a 1/2 inch. And then to cut, you're going to push down on the tip and follow with the back of the knife. So you have an even plank. And you're going to do this with all the potatoes. And once you have all your planks, this one isn't so great, but we'll see what we could do. You're going to cut them into the same thickness as they are in width. So an 1/2 inch by a 1/2 inch, give or take, but you want to be as even as possible. Now I have a pot of water. This is just a cold pot of water. Nothing else is in it. And I'm going to add all the potatoes to it. We're going to bring this to a boil. Once it's at a boil, we're going to turn it down to a simmer and let these cook for about 5 to 7 minutes. They'll still be very raw, but most of the starches will be out. So I'm going to take them now out of the water. It's been about 5 minutes, more like 6. And I'm putting them onto paper towels. And these are just going to rest in the fridge until I'm ready to use them. Now while we're waiting for the oil to get hot, we'll build our tartar sauce. I have mayonnaise, gherkins, lemon, capers, dill, Worcestershire, and Dijon. We're just gonna, another one of those easy recipes, just add everything to the bowl. Now, of course, we need to taste our work when this is done, right? Because this is supposed to be tart and savory and lemony, but nothing should really stand out. So we're going to taste. I'm thinking more lemon and a pinch of salt. Our oil is at 350 degrees, so it's time to add the chips. But this is a first fry. We're going to fry them twice. And in the first fry, you're just looking to cook them, not get them brown. So this will take about 3 minutes. And when their 3 minutes is up, onto a paper-lined sheet tray they go. Now I'm bringing the oil back to 350 degrees, dredging the fish in the flour that was left over, and then the batter. And I'm going to carefully add the fish into the oil. Now these will turn brown. You're cooking these completely in the oil. So get everything dredged and into the oil. And you need to work kind of quickly. I mean, of course you're going to be super careful, but you want all the fish to get into the deep fryer at the same time-ish. After about 3 minutes, you're going to flip them all, and they should be beautifully golden brown like this. And give them another 3 minutes on the other side. Once they're done, put them on a sheet tray that's lined with a rack, and I have a 200-degree oven ready for them to be kept warm while we continue cooking our chips. But before we add the chips back to the oil, I'm going to skim out any of the residual batter that was left over from the fish. I'm also raising the temperature on the oil to 400 degrees. When we're there, it's time to add the chips back to the oil. Now once they're all in, now you're looking to get them golden brown. So this could take 3 or 4, maybe 5 minutes, depending on your oil, the temperature of the stove, the pan you're using. If it retains heat, then they'll brown even. And when they look like this, they're done. You'll feel that they're crispy too. And again, just like the fish, I'm putting them on a rack-lined sheet tray. As soon as they come out of the oil, hit them with salt. Ready to serve. Okay, what's not to like? French fries, crispy, right? Gorgeous dipping sauce. Yum. Perfectly salted. Hot. Delicious. Fish and chips. All right, ready? I want you to hear the crunch when I cut into this. Did you hear that? It's very hard to do this, but oh, I think I got it. Yes. All right, ready? Look at that. Look at that. You can't get better than that. Oh my gosh. It's gonna be super hot. I have to blow. Delicious. Oh wow, the fish is so tender, so flavorful. If you can find haddock versus cod, definitely use that. But you know, if not, cod will certainly work. You could use any white fish, right? I mean, haddock, plaice, P-L-A-I-C-E, I think is the way you spell it. That fish is very English for fish and chips. But haddock, you want a cold water white fish. You can't use mahi, although you could. I mean, there's no reason why you can't even use salmon, but if you want authentic flavor, then you need to use a cold water white fish for this dish. Now I didn't have it, but the other way that you can dress this dish is by using malt vinegar. That's real popular. Or HP sauce. HP sauce is kind of like ketchup, but it's got tamarind in it. So it's interesting, and a bunch of other different flavors. So delicious. So delicious. Now, summer is just a day away here. All right. This is June 19th today. So happy June 19th to all of you who celebrate. But tomorrow is the summer solstice. It is summer, guys. And I looked ahead to the 10-day forecast. 101 degrees on Tuesday. Where am I going with this? Well, we're looking for foods that are easy to prepare, quick, don't take much, don't take an oven to work, to do. And, all you gotta do is put on a pot of boiling hot lava like oil and you're good to go. When I took a trip to England, and I'm going back a long time ago, there were still fish and chip shops. So, okay, I'm gonna say still, I am, ancient, right? But I was there a while ago, and there were fish and chips. We were in London. And the most popular ones still used the newspaper, but I was told that they can't really use the old newspapers anymore to put the fish and the chips in. And what that was in old days when they used to do this dish, they used the newspaper of the day to blot the oil off of the fish, and they just lined your tray with it. So when you ordered it from your fast food restaurant or your chippery, that you would get it and the newspaper would line the plate. So I don't know, it was like I don't know when, they figured out that the dye from the newspaper was toxic. So they couldn't line with newspaper anymore. Then they used just regular newspaper without print on it, but it wasn't the same, right? It didn't give you the same iconic visual that you get with the meal. So then they started to use proper paper that was made especially for the chipperies, and and now they serve them with the paper again. It's very funny. How things evolve, right? How things evolve. All right, now it's cool enough. I'm gonna dip. Yum. So the meal wouldn't be complete without a good dark beer. This is a amber lager, and it's left over from the batter that I made for the fish and chips. You can't let it go to waste. So cheers. Cheers, big ears. This is to you being resurrected, and to merry old England, and of course, St. George. Plus consists of flour, cherry jam, fondant, eggs, butter, almond extract, cherries and syrup, and sugar. So these cherries and syrup are a specialty item. You don't want maraschino cherries, you want cherries and syrup. They're sometimes called glacé. Now, for the cupcakes, we're going to add our butter, and the butter is soft, and sugar. Now you could do this in a stand mixer with a whisk, but I'm going to do it by hand. I figure I won't need to go to the gym, at least not for upper arm work. Once it gets to the point where it's nice and creamed together, we're going to scrape down the sides. And we're going to add the almond extract. Followed by the eggs. And give it all a good whisk. Now I'm going to change out my whisk for the spatula because I'm going to start to add my flour. Scraping down the sides one more time. And we're going to fold in the flour. I'm going to put it all in. And then the folding process is just bringing the batter that's underneath to the top. Turning the bowl every once in a while, making sure that it's all incorporated. At that point, you can add your cherries. Now I did drain these cherries, but there may be a little bit of syrup left. That's okay. It'll actually thin the batter a little bit, which is nice. Now to a muffin tin, and I'm a fan of silicone, you're going to add your batter. This amount of batter is only going to make 10 cupcakes. So you want to make sure that the batter only fills half to 3/4 of the way, ideally halfway. And then just make sure that the batter is even in the pan. And these go into the oven at 350 degrees for about 20 minutes. Yeah. Now, while the cupcakes are baking, we're going to make our buttercream. So I have this powdered or confectioner's sugar. It's also called super fine sugar sometimes. But you want to strain it because when it comes in a bag like this, you don't know how long it's been sitting and it could cake together. So definitely sift it out. So here it is, sifted, plus very soft butter, cream, and vanilla. So now I brought out the big guns. I have my stand mixer with a paddle attachment. I'm going to add my soft butter, and we're going to cream it. Then we're going to turn the speed down to slow, and we're going to, spoon by spoon, add the confectioner's sugar. And once that's all incorporated, add your vanilla. And then you're going to add the cream. Now you may not use all of it, right? You're just going to add cream until it gets to the consistency you're looking for. I used about 2 tablespoons. Now we're ready to put our cupcakes together. We've got the buttercream set aside, and I'm popping the cupcakes out of the form. Now, I'm looking at them and I'm thinking they're a little lopsided, so I'm going to take a serrated knife and I'm just going to cut the tops until they're nice and flat and even. Now they're not looking pretty, but they will in a minute. Before I ice them though, I'm going to take a little of the center out with a spoon. Just like that. And then with the cherry jam, and you can also use strawberry jam, I'm going to put in about a teaspoon. And then we're going to pop that piece that we took out back on. Just like that. Now once all your cupcakes are filled, you're going to put them in the freezer. You don't want the crumbs to get in the way of your icing. So when they're partially frozen, they're easier to ice. While the cupcakes are in the freezer, I'm going to work my fondant. So just a matter of rolling it out, and you want a 1/4 inch thickness. Not too thick because it's super sweet. I'm taking a bench scraper and I'm going to find center, and then I'm going to use it as my edge to cut my shapes. And I'm going for about 1/4 inch strips. So I'm eyeballing and cutting. Now once all your strips are ready, I'm not going to use the ends because they're a little too thick. Any fondant you don't need or you don't use, you can re-roll. I'm going to take a strip and take a second strip and put it over the top. So I have an X. Now I have this little top that I use for little ramekins. It's the same size as my cupcake. If you don't have something like this, you can just cut yourself like a little parchment circle. But basically, I'm trimming it out so it's only, the arms of the cross only come to the edge of that circle. And you're going to do this 9 more times so that you have something like this. Now our cupcakes just came out of the freezer, and we're going to ice them. And just like as I cut the tops off so that they weren't rounded or uneven, I'm looking to do the same thing with the icing. I'm icing them, but I'm gonna square off the top to the best of my ability and keep the edges round. Just like that. Now we're ready to put our crosses on. So we don't need to do much. Just lay them on top and press them down on the sides and in the center so that they adhere. Let's try these Bakewells. So when I was doing research on what to serve on St. George's Day, which is April 23rd, I didn't come up with specific recipes. Basically, St. George is the patron saint of England, so therefore, any typical English dish is going to be suitable for St. George Day. So that's why we did fish and chips and the quote-unquote English breakfast that was a little more high-end. And now these Bakewells. I saw the picture of them with the red cross and I thought, it's perfect. It's perfect. St. George is patron saint of England, but of many other countries. The guy was just like, everybody wanted to adopt him. He was the perfect saint. And so there's many countries we could have built a menu around. And so when it comes up in a reading, just know patron saint George is international in many ways. So you can do any dish really, but when it comes down to it, England just nailed it for me. So let's try these Bakewells, see what we got. I'm gonna take a big bite. Ready? I'm not. Mm-hmm. Super sweet. All right. This is my first time working with fondant, or fondant, however you say it. I like the way it's dipping in. Isn't that cool? I wasn't happy with the list of ingredients, and I'm sure maybe you can make it yourself. I'm sure you can, and use a little bit better ingredients, but it was just the way to top this, right, is with fondant. Now, I could have added red food coloring to a little bit of the vanilla buttercream, but I didn't have the proper tip that you need. It's it's like a flat tip, and it's used a lot for making rose petals or petals of flowers, but I didn't have that tip. And I went to Michael's and I looked, and they were all sold out. So the next thing was finding fondant, and Michael's had it, and they had red. So there it is. But if you really wanted to, you could forgo the fondant and just use a tip, and then make your cross out of red. Use a red gel food color, add it to the red gel versus regular food coloring that's watery will give you a more vibrant color without watering down your buttercream. So use gel colors, and if you can find it, powdered colors is even better. I was even looking to find like dried beet that I could, crumble up and add to it, but I was thinking it would be a little too chunky. Long story short, there's many ways to make your crosses. You don't have to use fondant, but it was easy. And, it's only a little bit, and you're only going to have it once a year, so indulge. The cherries that you use inside are important. Don't buy maraschino cherries. This is so sweet as is. You don't want to go over the top with them because they're like eating pure sugar. The cherries that I sought out in the syrup, first of all, they taste like cherries. They don't taste like candy, and they don't bring too much more sweetness into the cake because you don't need it. You've got sugar in the batter, you've got sugar in the buttercream, and you've got an enormous amount of sugar in the fondant. So the cherries in the center are like the cherry on top, right? They really make the flavor. And a little essence of that almond is lovely, really nice. Little Bakewells. And if you Google Bakewell, I'm sure a custard or a tart is going to come up for you first before you see anything like this. And that's the traditional way of making a Bakewell. Bakewell is actually a village in England, and it's where this particular pastry was created. So it's iconic England, Bakewells. I hope by now you have an understanding of the Judgment card a little better, and all the foods that we paired with it and why. Today is the summer solstice. It is a day where it's tempered, right? We have equal of day and night. And it's also a transition, just like this card. It's the transition from spring to summer, to a time where we're more relaxed, right? The spring is all about get up, go, do, get all the things done outdoors that you weren't able to do in the wintertime. But now in the summer, it's time to put our feet up and relax, right? At least for me, that's how I go about the seasons. Winter is my hibernation state. Spring is when I get everything done that I possibly can do, outdoors mostly. And then summer is where I just take it easy. Because September, you're going to do all the work to get you to the point where you can hibernate in winter. So it's a cycle, but it's also transformative. Where I live, we do have the 4 seasons. Where you live, you might only have 1 season, where it's always summer every day. It's fabulous. But even with places that are pretty steady with their weather, there's still seasons. You can feel it internally. And that's where we go to with this card, right? So you get the Judgment card in a reading. There are several questions to ask. One is, what have you been thinking about lately that you have been internally going over and over with, because you know it's a change of some sort, but you're not sure how to execute it, or if the timing is right to execute it. What signs have you been seeing, if you're savvy to that kind of thing? Like, have you been seeing repeated numbers on the clock? Have you been seeing license plates that say, go for it? It could be really things like that. What signs have you been getting? And what signs do you know that they're signs? Because internally you're doing the work, right? You're saying, there's something, I gotta change something. I know there's something I must do. And how do I do it? When do I do it? And, these are all things that are going to start to happen when the Judgment card comes into a reading. It's very prominent. It's a wake-up call. The angel is blowing the trumpet right in your ear. He couldn't have gotten closer to those people coming out of their graves. They definitely heard that trumpet call. So what trumpet call are you answering to? What's your trumpet call? The Judgment card, it's kind of cut and dry in a way. And it brings forth all the things that we've experienced up to this point in the Fool's journey. As I said in the opening, I believe the transformation starts to begin with the Hierophant. Because before that, we're being taught. We're a sponge and we're bringing in all the information. But it's the Hierophant when we start to ask the questions. And in asking the questions, our mind is saying, wait a minute, they told me this, but does it really mean this? And I heard something else, and that could certainly mean that as well, So you're starting to question, you're starting to decipher, you're starting to, discernment is kicking in, right? You're making choices with discernment, or judgments with discernment. There's judgment, and then there's judgment with discernment. And that is what we're looking at here, because we're looking at the last judgment. The last judgment, biblical scripture. And in that last judgment, God has looked upon the situation and decided it's either keep it going the way it is or tear it all down. And it's not like they took a half a second to make that decision. Centuries. So, we're obviously still here. So he's not made the decision yet, thank goodness. But you see where I'm going with that, right? There's much knowledge, information taken in like a computer, going over the information, and then making this judgment. Educated choice. I feel like I'm going all over the place, but really when it comes down to the vortex of stirring, right? Dropping the egg in, the egg sinks to the bottom, but all of the whites come to the surface and encapsulates the yolk into a beautiful little home that is like a pillow of goodness that we break into, and it oozes forth to give us a gorgeous sauce. That's the Judgment card in the culinary way, in the culinary description. So wherever you are in your journey, I hope when you get to the Judgment card, you can go forth with your resurrection in an enlightened and a choice from discernment that is right for you. I'll see you next week.